And you are good, Jerry.
Well, one of the many advantages to not doing morning drive radio anymore, and there are a lot. I'll make a list someday. With I used to have to go to bed at halftime of the Monday night game, or if I pushed it maybe three quarters. It was tough because sometimes there were good games. And I love Monday Night Football. I love NFL football. Well, last night I got to stay up to the end. I felt like a real football fan, and it was a great, great football game. I decided to root for the Browns for whatever reason, root against the Ravens. It didn't work out. I'm glad I wasn't betting because if you bet on the Browns, it was as heartbreaking as it gets as they took a safety on the last play of the game and lost by 3. But anyway, as I'm watching the Browns, here's what I often do. I often think of my friend VB, and VB is here. And with that sad sack face and that Atlanta Falcons hat, which is perfect for today, VB, because I think of you often on Sundays and how painful it must be to root for certain teams, like the Browns, obviously for years, for decades, have been a tough team to root for. But under the radar as the most frustrating team, the most painful team to root for, I have to give it to your Atlanta Falcons. If you weren't watching Red Zone Sunday, you probably didn't notice that Matty Ryan threw another pick that you wouldn't. If a high school kid did this in his first game, you'd say, "Are you an idiot?" He threw a pick in the flat in just before what was there? A minute left in that game? 2 minutes left. Handed the game away. The Falcons are 4-9. The Falcons never recovered from 28-3, by the way, never recovered from the beating they took in the Super Bowl by the Patriots. But why would you ever choose to root for a team like the Falcons? I mean, especially if you don't grow up in Atlanta. Why put yourself through that?
First of all, wrong hat, Jerry. Excuse me for 1 second. But
wrong hat. He's taking off his Falcons visor and putting on his, what the hell is that?
Oh, it's a Santa hat. Oh,
Falcons Santa hat.
Yeah.
Wow.
Classic.
Tis the season, Jerry.
You have nice. I'll give you that. You have nice hats. They have nice uniforms. They have a great logo. They have a great nickname that will never be purged from history. But why would you ever? I mean, I like Matt Ryan. He was fun to watch at BC. He seems like a nice guy. And he's going to the Hall of Fame, by the way. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. I look at him and I say he will find a way to lose. He's one of those guys I look at and I say, nice guy, loser. Kind of like Phillip Rivers. Guy like that. Another Hall of Famer going to the Hall of Fame and will never win anything.
So 2 things. One, they not only never recovered from 28-3, but I don't know if you remember seeing Belichick on Letterman after that Super Bowl. Belichick said that. He goes, these are the types of things. Letterman asked Belichick, you've been on that side before. He goes, yeah, you don't get over those, and oftentimes you don't recover from those. And I told my wife, I said, we won't be back in the Super Bowl for a long time.
I mean, forget the Super Bowl. I
agree. They got to get rid of Ryan. He is that team now, which is he's just good enough to give it away every time. Believe me, I don't want to go over Falcons history, but that's just awful. And the only reason I root for him, Jerry, there's 2 reasons. One is you were me in the 80s. You realize that, right? People would say to you, why do you root for the Patriots? They're the most frustrating, awful. Who fumbled in Denver when they didn't even need to hand it off. Like the Pats were that team. That's what gives me hope, is that at some point in my life, we are going to be the Pats. But in the meantime, my older brother was a Pats fan. And that was it. I have 5 brothers. We all have different teams because you can't root for the same team.
I agree. When I was a kid, it was like rooting for the Browns. Rooting for the Patriots was rooting for the lovable losers. I mean, they would just find a new way to break your heart. But that all changed, obviously, when Tom Brady came around. And I mentioned yesterday, and this could be the most unbelievable statistic in the NFL statistic I've ever seen, and I'll say it again. In the other day when Buffalo won Sunday night, that meant for the first time in 20 years, an AFC East team would have more wins than the Patriots.
Dallas had that when we were growing up, by the way. Landry, right before.
No. Yeah. You're not listening, obviously, but that's okay. I mean, you're a Falcons fan. You're not listening. For the first time in 20 years, another team in the division had more wins than the Patriots. If I said 5 years, that'd be unbelievable, or 8 years, 2 decades, there was no team that had more wins in the division than the New England Patriots. And to me, it was not all that much fun. It was kind of disappointing. I've said this many times. I would always look forward to a good team in the division and a good quarterback. And finally, there is one. In fact, once the Jets draft Trevor Lawrence, the Patriots will be the only team in the division without a young stud quarterback. In fact, I tweeted this last night, and it was not meant to be taken literally, but that's how it works with Twitter. I said, I'm watching Baker Mayfield, and he was spectacular last night. He was smart, and I usually expect him to do dumb things because he's a meathead, but he was smart. He was accurate, made good decisions. He put up 42 points and against the Ravens defense. And then Lamar Jackson comes out of the bathroom after a Trace McSorley's backup gets hurt, and they're saying
cramps, Jerry, like cramps.
Yeah, and he was on the toilet, and they had to yank him out and put him back in because Trace McSorley got hurt. And Brian Greasy is the announcer, who is excellent, by the way, says, I don't know who's going to play quarterback. So I'm saying this is going to be wild. You're going to see a tight end or a defensive back play quarterback.
And they would have to throw. That's the difference. Unlike Denver that week that said, we're just not going to do this. They would have put in a guy who would have had to have thrown it, which would have been great. Which
would have been wild. Instead, out comes Lamar Jackson, Superman, coming out of the phone booth as they point, and he comes in the game and he wins the game and he makes a couple of great throws, and it was just great theater. But
you haven't been there, by the way? You ever been there where, like, literally you've tried to, you're like, look, there's 6 minutes in the game, I can hold this, and then you realize I can't hold it? To have that interrupted, like, remember the last time you were there and your wife's like, honey, no, seriously, the garbage guys are, I can't do it. I can't stop what I'm doing now to take garbage out. He not only stopped, you could see when he was jogging out, he was still like, because stuff was shifting.
You know what? It was great, and God bless him. It was a great.
It was.
But if he were to not come back and they were going to use a tight end at quarterback, I forget, did they mention who the third emergency quarterback was? They didn't mention. So it would have been some position player. If that happened, then they and Lamar Jackson didn't play, and they said, oh, it's just a cramp. He's fine. He'll be in practice on Wednesday. He would have had trouble living that down or explaining that away. It
was such a big game for them. I mean, that's everything.
It's a huge game. They have the easiest schedule in the NFL for the last 3 weeks. They're going to
they've lost to the Patriots, so they can lose to anybody, like anybody.
No question, but they're going to the playoffs, and it was a huge game. They had to win this game. They won it in the final, seconds. And it was a 1-point game, and then with a 55-yard field goal by the best field goal kicker ever in Justin Tucker, who made it look like a extra point, not even a Sarafola extra point, like a routine extra point.
There it is. Hold on, honey, he did it. First 10 minutes, I knew.
Sarafola, by the way, her career's over. They're not going to play. Vanderbilt is waving the flag, and they're not playing anymore.
They're not going to play in a bowl game? They voted against going to a bowl game?
Right, they're like BC. They're BC. They're passed on the bowl game. But she released a statement and said how great it was to be a football player. And I hate to break it to her, but you're not a football player. All you did was kick 2 extra points. And there's a column, I think in the Boston Globe, I couldn't read it, obviously, but I saw it saying that was really hard to do, what she did. Yeah. And I'm just going to say, I know I'm digressing here. I coached youth football for years, and I knew a handful of 12-year-olds who played for me or against me and could do that. 12-year-old boys could do that. I'm sorry, Boston Globe.
One of my many athletic achievements, Jerry, at Ralph C. Mahar Regional High School in junior high, I was the holder for the kicking, but I was the emergency kicker. So I did have to practice extra points. I could actually do it once upon a time when I was like 11.
I kicked in Pop Warner, but we never kicked extra points. I kicked off, but we never even tried it. That was when I was like 10. But I could have. I did it, in practice. It's silly, but it's exactly what you expect from the Boston Globe, to take something and completely, fabricate, this myth that it was really hard what she did. It was not. She didn't play football. She didn't do anything hard. The whole thing was a stunt. But anyway, go ahead.
She hit the extra point. I assume we now have to call her doctor.
That's a good one.
let me point something out to you, though, Jerry. One of the reasons why you should love Lamar Jackson is not only did he do while he was in the midst of doing what he was doing. Did you see earlier in the game when he screwed up? They're at like the 5 and they don't get the playoff and they have to burn the timeout, and he's coming over to the sidelines and you can tell Harbaugh's barking at him through the neck gaiter, and Lamar Jackson just walks over and bear hugs him and completely he completely melts Harbaugh, who was yelling at him, and Jackson's like, relax, and he just relaxed the guy.
I know I digressed there, but the point was he had to do that, and I'm giving him credit. I'm taking nothing away. But if that game ends, Cleveland wins because Cleveland was winning, and I don't think the backup tight end was going to take the Ravens back. They needed him to come out of the bathroom, and he did. But if he didn't, and they said, oh, no, he's fine for next week, he just had a cramp, that would be a big stain on his record. He would be. And
literally, probably those pants
and he had to come back, and he did. And I know I know I haven't even looked at the comments on Facebook, but I know someone's probably yapping at me because they always do, saying there's no way Matty Ryan is a Hall of Famer.
No,
yes, he is.
No,
yes, he is.
He isn't.
He's got 55,000.
If he played baseball, he would, but not in football. They don't mess around with that.
Just wait till you see the stats when he's done. 340 touchdown passes, 55,000 yards. I mean, granted, he could have really used that Super Bowl title in the end.
That would have changed everything. Yeah,
it would have changed everything, and he didn't get it. And people like him too. People like him. First team All Pro, 4 Pro Bowls, all kinds of statistics, which he will continue to pile up. He's 35, and just like Phillip Rivers, when it's over, you're going to look at the numbers and you're going to go, wow. And all 3 of those guys in that draft class, Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Phil Rivers, will all be Hall of Famers, even though Eli wouldn't. If he weren't in New York and he weren't such a nice guy to the media, he wouldn't. He's only thing.
But the way the NFL does it, to me, Eli has the better argument of the others because Eli won 2 Super Bowls against one of the greatest teams in the history of the league. Those guys,
that's all he's got. That's all he's got. He's like,
those 2 other guys lost against those teams repeatedly. Like,
true, but you will see. It's not something I want to dwell on, but you will see in the end when you pile, and it's a phenomenon, modern day phenomenon when these guys put up these gaudy numbers. But you'll see it with both guys, Ryan and Rivers, and in the end, people are going to go, "Holy crap! Those numbers jump off the page." And you got a bunch of Hall of Famers like, Joe Namath and Terry Bradshaw, and where you look at their numbers and you go, "Why are they in the Hall of Fame?"
Why is Namath in, Jerry?
Because he won. He won Super Bowl.
If you don't win a Super Bowl, you're not getting in unless you're.
Why is Trent Dilfer in the Hall of Fame? I mean, it can't be only Super Bowls. They matter.
Warren Moon is the only analogy, but Moon played in a different time. I don't think Moon's a Hall of Famer either, considering most of his stats were in a run and shoot offense. But they never won anything. But Moon was in a different time when he compiled those stats. Ryan, everybody's got those stats.
No, well, not everybody, but you'll see in the end. You'll see, and I don't care one way or the other. I know, he's a BC guy and he's a nice guy, but they blew that Super Bowl and they have never recovered. The Patriots, it's kind of another thing that they should be known for historically. That they don't just beat teams; they ruin them. They ruin.
Why is that though? Like, why are they ruined for for the next?
Because you put everything into beating the man, and they were the man for 20 years. So you put everything in, and when you have it, it's Lucy pulling the football away, and then Charlie Brown ends up on his back.
How many?
Had him.
How many teams?
That's why Mahomes is so great.
The Rams.
Is the only one. Mahomes is the only one. He recovered, and he said, "We'll see you next year because I'm so young and crazy." Yes. And then the Pats weren't man enough to show up to take their beating, and the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. I mean, what Mahomes did last year is so unusual.
He's got a good coach, but they've ruined other coaches, and the best example would be Dan Quinn. Just guys who they ruined, and I'm not sure, Pete Carroll ever recovered from losing that Super Bowl. He had won one, but and he's still there, and he's another guy who'll be in the Hall of Fame, but he'll always be known as the guy who threw the ball at the goal line when he had Marshawn Lynch in the backfield. But that's because Belichick does that to people. Belichick gets in their head and they try to outsmart him and they outsmart themselves. But anyway, I just saw this from my old producer, Chris Curtis tweeted out that Belichick without Brady, 61-70. 61-70 career. I mean, I knew his numbers. Obviously, he was 36-44 in Cleveland. Came here, went 5-13 before Brady took over. So the numbers are never going to look good compared to the numbers with Brady, of course. But he tweets this out: Rex Ryan's coaching record, 61-66. Belichick's record without Brady, 61-70. So Belichick without Brady is worse career-wise than Rex Ryan, which obviously it's not fair. You can't just say take away the quarterback you had for 20 years. I think Belichick and Brady. Another thing, obviously, they get plenty of credit. Obviously, the best coach ever, best quarterback ever. But you know what's remarkable, and we don't give them credit for this, is that they could get along. Like there's no other example of two guys and who could get along for 20 years, especially when they didn't really like each other. They didn't hang out. They didn't play golf. They didn't have dinner together. They had very different philosophies and outlooks on life. And yet they knew they had to get along to make it work. And when you look at it now, and because Belichick was so great for so long and won 6 Super Bowls no one's going to blame him. But if he didn't let Brady leave, if he didn't say, okay, I'm okay with Brady leaving, they'd be on the way to the playoffs right now. So this lost season, yes, they would be. I mean,
why would this year be different than last year? When they tanked and almost
went
missed
to the playoffs.
They almost missed, and then they got smoked by Tennessee.
Yes, I'm not saying they win a Super Bowl, but they're 6-7. They're still in the playoff hunt, by the way, sort of, kind of. They're still in the playoff hunt. But with Brady, we went over it with Turtle Boy. What did we say they were going to be? Obviously, they'd be 7-6, maybe 8-5. They'd be on their way to the playoffs, 8-5 with Tom Brady. But whatever, you can't. I don't think you can blame Belichick for that, because he did manage to get along for 20 years. When you look at show me another example of that in any sport where a coach was smart enough to not alienate the superstar. It just doesn't.
Yeah, but if that's your number one passion in life, for both of them, football's their number one passion. Can't you get past all the
Jerry?
They look pretty happy.
When you say that about LeBron James, his passion is basketball. How many coaches has LeBron James had now? 6 or so. I mean, I don't know the number, but you'd say that about any superstar, and you'd say very few have had the same coach, even though they didn't like him. Because I don't think Brady particularly gets along with Belichick in every way, and yet they knew they had to get along.
You think Francona liked Manny?
No. Of course.
You think Babe Ruth's manager liked him from 26 to 36? I
don't know. How many managers did Babe Ruth have? I don't know the answer to that.
I would guess one, because they won it every year or every other year. I mean, there are guys that have done it. It's very rare in the modern.
So you go back 100 years.
I agree. Very rare. By the way, can we touch, Jerry, on 2 things from last night? What happened this weekend that kicking all of a sudden became impossible, other than for Sarah?
Yeah,
Bolton?
it was painful watching the Minnesota kicker. Was painful.
It was Dan Bailey. I felt bad for the guy, but then last night Cody Parkey was 1 missed extra point away from being cut. I can guarantee you, for Cleveland, he was that close to being cut. It was going on all over the league.
And then Justin Tucker steps out there for a 55-yarder and looked like it was it was going right through. I mean, you just knew he's good, he's great, he likes the pressure, and he won them the game with that kick. And then all the bettors who bet on Cleveland were saying, "Oh, at least I won money." And the Cleveland Browns on the final kickoff go backwards, or on the final play, go backwards out of the end zone. 3-point win for Cleveland. I mean, for Baltimore.
How do gamblers?
I don't know.
Did you see the Chiefs game? Did you see what happened in the Chiefs game?
I'm pretty sure I did it. I watched Red Zone for 8 hours. So yes,
the Chiefs were given 7. They were up 6 with a minute to go. They got the first down that they could run out the clock, but for some reason, They kicked a field goal to go up 9, and everybody that bet the Chiefs went nuts.
Oh, right.
But then they hit a bomb, Miami, and they kicked the field goal with a couple of seconds left to put it back to 6. They put the ball in front of the bettors and said, "Here."
Oh, that's right. They did it because they needed to score twice. They went with the field goal.
Yes.
Under that.
But that meant the line was changed. It was awful. I don't know how gamblers survive week to week, just emotionally.
There was somebody who bet an alternate spread last night, put like $40,000 down on it, would have paid out 70 or 75,000, and they lost it on the safety. Like just
I'm gonna guess most bettors bet the Browns because they were home, they were the Browns, they were 9-3. That was their year, and it is. I mean, they're still going to the playoffs, and I'll root for them. It's a good story. Before we started recording, VB said he doesn't like them because they have the worst nickname in sports, right? The Browns. You don't like the Browns?
Well, should we change the Patriots to the New England Belichicks? Why would you name it after?
That's not a bad idea.
Their nickname is so useless that at the 50 on Monday Night Football, they didn't paint anything because they don't have anything to paint. There's no. What are you going to just have a?
That's what makes it little. That's what makes it unique and different. And I mean, Turtle Boy didn't even know why they were called the Browns.
That's a problem. That's a problem. But it's by far the worst. If the Indians are going to change theirs, the football team.
But I like their uniform. Anyway, so all right, we'll get to this. Since you weren't here yesterday. We talked about it. The Indians admitted that they were getting rid of the nickname. They bowed to the mob and said, no, they got rid of Chief Wahoo, 2 years ago? And now they're getting rid of the nickname. They announced, though, that they're not going to do it yet. They are not going to do a season where they're called the CBT, the Cleveland baseball team, the way the Washington Redskins have done. What happens if the Redskins have won 4 in a row? They're going to win that division. I'm predicting that right now. They're feeling it. They're rolling. And they're going to the playoffs. So if they go to the playoffs, say they have some miracle run, maybe not the Super Bowl, win a couple playoff games with the name WFTs, do they stick with it or do they come up with a nickname?
Don't mess with the streak, Jerry. Isn't that the line we all learned from Bull Durham?
That will be strange if they say we're going to continue without a nickname and just in every announcement.
Idea. I hate to keep getting to it, but the Washington Doctors.
Oh, doesn't work for me. Sorry, doesn't work for me.
Put a stethoscope on the helmet.
No, I expected them to do red something, and so did lots of people when they made the change. I thought they were going to be the red tails or red hawks or red something, same uniforms and same colors, and be the Red Hawks. It didn't happen for whatever reason. We mentioned this yesterday. It seems odd that you wouldn't take advantage of the situation. I think Cleveland will. And come up with something.
Washington's doing it smart. First of all, you never rush into this stuff. 2, they are selling merchandise.
Been talking about it half my life.
They are selling merchandise as Washington Football Club. I mean, so they're going to sell that stuff, especially if they make the playoffs. And they're kind of ticking off the league because the league would prefer to have all the logos. There is no logo. And then they're going to do it again in a year where they're going to sell all new stuff again. I mean, it's not a bad idea. The Cleveland baseball team, for what it's worth, Atlanta Braves, Kansas City Chiefs, they're all going. I've been telling you this for 10 years. All of them are going to be gone.
Well, I don't disagree. I said that yesterday. What's the defense? Make the case for Braves, Chiefs, Warriors. How do you make the case for them if Indians is gone and the mob will just move to the Braves next and pressure the Braves? It worked with the Redskins. Daniel Snyder said for years, I will never, ever change the nickname. And Daniel Snyder eventually threw up his arms. They pressured FedEx that sponsors the field. They pressured his biggest sponsors, and he had no choice. I mean, we all know what that's like. The mob is relentless. And when they set their mind on something, the mob in this day and age gets their way. Very few people stand up to the mob. I mean, we talked about the Wall Street Journal yesterday. Surprised me, and I give them credit. The Wall Street Journal stood up to the mob. The Biden-led mob, which is the scariest one, they get all the power now. They certainly have the power of big tech behind them, and said, go screw. They defended their guy. We can talk about that. I know you want to talk about Dr. Jill. who I already can't stand. I'm telling you, she is loathsome.
So prescribe something for that for you, Jerry.
But when the mob sets their sights on you, you're in trouble. And they got the Indians to bow to the pressure. But to me, it's ridiculous because the Braves, Warriors, Chiefs, those are good examples. Why would you name your team after something that's a parody, that's mocking those people? They named the team after brave, courageous warriors, leaders of who led their people into war, courageously won war. That's who they're honoring. There's nothing demeaning about the Chiefs or Warriors or Braves.
Well, Wahoo was. I always thought Wahoo was a little much. Even as a kid, I was like, wow, they wear this on their hat sometimes.
Right, and I don't disagree. It's not like a logo that obviously pays tribute to an ethnic group, like the Fighting Irish logo, the little drunken leprechaun. It's not like that. Or the Celtics.
The one that's going to get you is the Blackhawks in hockey, because it's a weird. It wasn't picked for
weird. It's the greatest logo in sports. It's one of the great uniforms in sports.
Yeah,
but it wasn't picked as an Indian nickname. But then they drew the logo with the tomahawks in it, even though it wasn't. So theirs is going to be. I agree. I think it's one of the great jerseys, although I hate them. But it's a great jersey. But what are they? That's the one where you go. But wait a minute. That's not even why we're called that. It's a military reference, I believe. And so that'll be interesting. But on the other hand, Jerry, don't you say to yourself, why are people so connected to Atlanta, for example? You know why you're the Atlanta Braves? It has nothing to do with your city. Your city, which is rich in history, you're called the Atlanta Braves because the team moved from Boston and ultimately ended up down there. There ought to be a rule when a team moves, they have to change the name, because the fact that Atlanta is somehow connected to that name is silly.
So you're in favor of the Redskins and the Indians changing their name, right?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I don't want to hear this for the rest of my life. Let's get on with it.
That's not a reason to change because you don't want to hear it. That's a complete, white flag surrender to the mob, saying, "Oh, if you just leave us alone,
why would I think I could give you at least 10 franchises that should be make me commissioner of all things, Jerry, and I'm going to fix sports starters. Utah Jazz will never.
That's the lamest. We're not doing your.
I'll tell you one worse. The LA Lakers. You ever been to LA?
Yeah, I've been to LA.
You ever dip your toe in a lake? You know why you haven't? They don't have them, Jerry. There's no lakes there. But for some reason, they're called the LA Lakers because Minneapolis has the land of 1,000 lakes.
Okay, save that for your point.
But so back to our point though yesterday, there's no benefit really. Well, I guess you could ask the question. There's no benefit to fighting back against the mob, right? So the Indians is a complete, he is strategically saying to himself, I am going to sell as much Cleveland Indians merchandise.
No, he's not.
Next year. Yes.
Well, you're right. That's a consolation prize. But what he's saying to himself is, I can't afford this if they pressure. And I don't know who the big sponsor is there. They don't have a stadium name, correct? They don't have the stadium's not sold, but they do have many, many sponsors in Cleveland. And he does not want to alienate them. And the ancillary benefit is he can sell stuff and capitalize on it. So
where do you make more money? Do you make more money fighting back against the mob to sell more merchandise using the nickname, or do you make more money, for a year and then changing it and selling more merch?
But if you polled your fans, if you polled Indians fans, it'd be 98-2. Keep the nickname.
Yeah, but that's true of everything, Jerry. Everybody's like you; they don't want to change anything ever. The fact is,
the name. They like
the name. Your favorite football team, Jerry. They changed their name. You're pretty cool with that, right?
Who's that?
Your favorite football team. They were the Boston Patriots when they started, right? What do you call them? What do you call them? Names change a lot.
I had a pennant. I probably lost it, but I had a pennant that says the Bay State Patriots. They were the Bay State Patriots for like a month. Or maybe
names
more,
change.
A couple months.
Do you want them to go back to the Red Stockings because we should never change anything ever?
I never said don't change anything ever. I never said. I made the point. My alma mater was the Redmen, and which is a stupid nickname, Redmen, and I changed it to Minutemen, which was very. I love the fact that the Minutemen, the new nickname, which they changed, 30 years ago, but the new nickname offends people too because it's a man with a gun, the logo. So it offends, and they want to change that. And so far, I don't think the mob has won. They will. They'll change it eventually. It'll be the
key-
UMass whatever transgenders or something.
you haven't though. UMass changed it to something cool. If you do this right, it benefits everybody. Cleveland has two easy ones. When that team first played organized baseball in that city, they were the Cleveland Spiders. That would be really easy and really good. If they don't go Spiders, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's right there. You have a guitar with a bat as the neck and a ball where the things are. It's a pretty easy logo, and it isn't going to be hard to sell merchandise. They also invented the X-ray in Cleveland. The Cleveland X-rays would be pretty good too.
That's
Cleveland Rockers. The Cleveland Rockers. I love it. I love that
version of the Cleveland Rocks. Like you saw the Brockton Rocks here in Boston. They had a really
You had me till you get to the X-ray part. That's the.
Oh yeah, the guy swings, and as he's hitting it, his body lights up like an X-ray. Jerry,
why would you want your team to be named after an X-ray?
Because they're lit, man. The team's lit.
No, the Rocks or Rock and Rollers or the Rollers or whatever is fine, but and it'll be. I have no doubt it'll be a big deal. They'll have a big contest. The winner will get, they'll win. They'll have 1 million logos. They'll put it up to a vote among their fans. They'll really capitalize on it as they should, which is my question with the Redskins is why they're not doing that. Why are they not?
Who's the owner in Cleveland? Who's the owner of the baseball team?
Jacobs.
So should it be the Cleveland Jacobs in honor of the?
No, don't. No,
name all their sports franchises after guys that own the team once.
I just read about them for Christ's sake.
Oh, Paul Dolan.
Dolan.
So the Cleveland Dolans.
Yep. Oh,
because if the Browns can do it, and that's so awesome, why don't we do that with baseball?
Tradition. You know what the dumbest nicknames of all
are? Another team.
You know what the dumbest nicknames of all are? The Red Sox and White Sox. Naming your teams after socks. Not even spelling it right. But they would never, ever mess with those nicknames. The fans wouldn't allow it. They wouldn't tolerate it. I mean,
the dumbest nicknames are the ones that have no connection to anything. Utah Jazz. That jazz scene in Utah is awesome.
But don't we just live in a world where it really
makes it cool? That makes it cool. It's weird and different.
New Orleans Jazz, yes, we all got it. That made total sense. And the New Orleans Pelicans, no, I've never liked that one.
You're not going to boycott the team. You're not going to stop watching. So it really doesn't matter. So as much as it sucks, like cowtailing to the mob, it doesn't matter. You're still going to watch the games. Right? Like,
yes. and right. I mean, did you think that the nickname Browns bother you last night as you're watching that great Monday night game? Was not. It didn't infect me at all. VB, sorry.
Oh, I agree, but that's what we do in this world, right? Like, has Amy Coney Barrett's children bothered you in any way, Jerry? But for 2 weeks, we had to be told she was a racist for adopting those kids.
Well, I don't. That's
what we do in this world. We make huge things out of things that are nothing.
I'll tell you, I'm never going to listen to Smokey Robinson again. That bothers me. Well,
I just saw this.
What happened with Smokey Robinson?
Oh, you didn't see this video? All right, hold on. I was just making,
yeah, this is worth it, Jerry.
Now you're building this up. Better be. But and then we'll get to Dr. Jill because I know VB has some thoughts on Dr. Jill.
Jerry, I saw this tweet from a guy the great Steve Robinson, who produces your former partner's podcast now show. But he said last night, if you're on a plane and the pilot's choking, and the guy comes out,
I said that yesterday. Adam Carolla said that like a year ago. That's an old take.
But it's pretty good. Right? Obviously, it's good. You used it. So
yes, I stole it yesterday, and but I've heard that from a number of people. It's if they yell, "Is there a doctor on the plane?" If you could say yes, then you can call yourself doctor. It is silly, and I think it's 100% accurate to say she's doing this out of insecurity. She was in her 50s, and she literally said she felt overlooked because the mail went to, Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Biden or whatever, and Vice President
Senator, yeah.
Well, where did you hear that yesterday? It was in one op-ed where the Wall Street Journal was defending the column, the opinion column, but you didn't hear that on television yesterday. The real reason why she did what she did. Nobody's talking about that.
Do either of you know?
Joe Biden actually said it. I saw the speech. Yeah. He actually said it that it bothered her.
Well, that doesn't mean it's true.
That's a good point. That's a good point. And it was a while ago because he was bald. That's how you know. If it was a long time ago, Biden was bald, and now he's got hair. But
when I was in prep school, between my junior and my senior, we got the teacher that moved in on the floor that I lived changed. In my senior year, he was a chemist. And he made you say doctor and he would stop everything. And the very first time that happened, Jerry, what would you have done? You would do everything. The same thing every one of us did. We looked at each other and went, oh, God, he's one of those types.
Right.
And that's what she's doing now.
It's one thing to say, and when I write my name on a return address or something, to say Dr. Jerry Callahan. It's another thing to correct people who don't refer to me as doctor. That's a douche move.
Well, that's another thing. That's another thing in sports. Make me commissioner, Jerry, because I would fix this. And you were part of this, by the way. Anyone who's ever interviewed Bob Kraft and called him Mr. Kraft,
right.
That's the dirtiest, grossest thing.
I never did that.
I knew it happened.
I knew
that to me because I own a sports franchise.
I knew Bob Kraft before he was Mr. Kraft. I knew Bob Kraft before he was Robert. They just.
You remember Bobby Knight, the old basketball coach?
No.
After the third championship, he said, "I'll be Robert."
No, Bob. He didn't want
to Bob. He went to Robert. And Vitale played along with all of that.
Of course, Bob Knight, right? He wanted to be Bob because somehow it was more dignified. But first of all, Jill Biden will go down in history. She'll be remembered as the spouse who forced her obviously impaired husband to run for president. And, she probably wasn't expecting him to win, but he did. Now she's going to be witness to the deterioration of her loved one before the world. The world is going to watch as he grows old and less cognitively aware of things, and it's going to be hard to watch. I mean, even me, I can't stand the guy. I certainly can't stand the people around him, but it's going to be painful to watch. And we got a glimpse of it last night when he gave his speech about the electoral college vote and all that, and declared victory, and he couldn't get through it. And then, far be it from me to mock someone who's got throat issues, but he had some throat issues last night. I don't know if you watched it, but he couldn't clear his throat. And
once again, in America, the rule of law, more Americans voted this year than have ever voted in the history of the United States. The votes counted. President Pence received when they won in 2016. Excuse me.
That's your preview of things to come. He's going to be giving State of the Union addresses, which generally go like an hour, and he's going to have trouble getting through it. I realize, as Tucker said, that some MSNBC contributor wrote the words for him, but he's going to have trouble reading those words.
Jerry, through it. You just talked about Matt Ryan for 15 minutes. You know the difference between him and Joe Biden? Joe Biden won. It doesn't matter. Winning changes everything. No matter what he does going forward, you think history's not going to be kind to Joe Biden? If you do, if you don't think so, you don't know who writes the history.
Well, I know. I mean, if obviously we know who writes the history. One of the leading historians was this lying snake, Meacham, who wrote the speech for Biden and then went on MSNBC, didn't admit he did, and critiqued the speech. And guess what? He really liked the speech that he wrote. So the history is being written by lying weasels like John Meacham and Michael Beschloss, these other rump swabs who just love the man. I'm not saying that they're not going to be glowing tributes to the man, but the whole world's going to watch him try to get through a speech and not be able to clear his throat or not be able to read the words or stumble over words. It's going to be kind of uncomfortable, and I blame Dr. Jill Biden. I think she is the driving force behind the man running for the third time when he should be playing with his grandchildren or taking walks or playing golf or going fishing or whatever most 78-year-olds do if they're happily enjoying their golden years. He's not supposed to be president. You're not supposed to be running the world, the free world, when you're 78. But that's beside the point. We're talking about the insecurities of the first lady, who now insists she be referred to as doctor, which is ludicrous. Nobody with a PhD in education should be called doctor, because to me, it's not fair to the actual doctor.
Her husband gets this, by the way. He's the one that said, "Hey, I'm Home Depot Joe." Of course, that was made up, but he understood, like, lose the airs and act like you're a regular person, because that plays well. He's run his whole political life that way, and yet she comes in and goes the exact opposite way and says, "No, I demand that this is what I'm referred to as." And everybody says both of those are awesome. And how Home Depot Joe and Dr. Jill,
and they're all
everything they are.
Everything's made up, as we know, with this crew, with this bunch, and it's going to get worse. It is scary to me when you think about what America just did. They voted They voted for Jack Dorsey. They voted for Mark Zuckerberg. They voted for the New York Times, the Washington Post, these complete liars and these dark forces in our lives. And they've been emboldened by the voters. And I realize it was, mail-in voters, and it was people that never voted before. And the whole thing was orchestrated wonderfully. As I said many times, they stole it fair and square. And I give them credit. They pulled it off. He's the president. It's disappointing to people, in the free markets, it's disappointed if you believe in freedom of speech and freedom of expression and freedom of religion. The Bill of Rights has taken a beating now, thanks to big tech and big media. But back to Dr. Jill. Here's why the whole thing is a joke, because I forget who ran the numbers, probably Media Research Center, but they looked at the New York Times, which doesn't generally refer to people with PhDs in education as doctor. They refer to her as doctor more than they do Ben Carson, who is a neurosurgeon who separated conjoined twins, who is literally a brain surgeon. They refer to her as doctor more than they do Rand Paul, who's an eye doctor, who's an actual doctor, who actually put his blood, sweat, and tears into medical school. These are real doctors who the New York Times, or I think it was the Times, could have been the Post, Washington Post, the same thing. Don't refer to Ben Carson as doctor, but do refer to Jill Biden, who got a PhD in education from the University of Delaware when she was in her 50s, just so people would be forced to call her doctor. It's silly. It's like a child, a child playing a game. Yeah, I'm gonna pretend I'm gonna play doctor.
You always want to know the rules going in, because then you can work with it. So now like up front, this is how it's going to be. Ben Carson got hot when he was running for president, and for a brief time was the leader in the clubhouse. And they were like, but he hasn't even performed surgery in years. I mean, he's not even really a doctor. Now, Jill Biden is absolutely a hardcore doctor, and people want her to distribute the vaccine to people, apparently. But fine, you know the rules now. So you can at least sort of work with that going forward. It's when it's like, Trump does a speech and does this with his cup, and you focus on that for hours. But then Biden does a speech last night and obviously needs a drink of water. No one's giving it to him for whatever reason. And you just pretend like that's not there.
Did Bill Cosby insist people call him Dr. Cosby? Because he had a PhD, I think, in education as well, correct?
I don't know on that one.
Billionaire Jeff Bezos owns Washington, D.C.'s hometown newspaper and may soon buy CNN. That is the democracy Joe Biden is talking about. The kind of democracy in which 11 left-wing billionaires who fund his campaigns run everything. That's the Chinese model of democracy that Joe Biden and his friends so admire. So get used to it, America. It's a new kind of democracy. In China, people in power don't have to answer questions, so neither does Joe Biden. Just last year, a voter brought up the Biden family's corruption during a town hall event, and Joe Biden responded by calling the man fat and challenging him to a push-up contest, just like the Chinese do. Just this Friday, an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal pointed out that Joe Biden's wife, Dr. Jill Biden, isn't actually a real doctor. Sorry, she's not going to be treating your high blood pressure. Dr. Jill Biden has the very same degree as Dr. Bill Cosby does, which is 1 degree from Dr. Pepper.
There you go. Well, I love Tucker, but why are you playing that, Cullinane? Why did you just put that in there?
Oh, I just clicked the wrong one. I meant to just click the clip. So. And then I can delete it.
Clicked on the wrong one. Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, he's got some editing to do post-show, Jerry. Let's
do it all the time. Jesus.
It was a great riff, but, I kind of would like to know you're about to play it, or tell me you're going to do it, and, we can put it in the right.
It would have been a 5-second drop in a normal world. Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
So you clicked the wrong button. All right. But anyway, I'm not going to call her Dr. Jill. I don't care. I'm not going to call her Bill
I think you got to own this.
Dr. Bill either. Dr. Cosby. No. Dr.
Education. She's Dr. Jill. I assume Saturday Night Live is going to have some really fun skits on this.
Here's why people really, revere and trust doctors in general. When you think of your doctor or your surgeon, you know how much work went into it. And by the way, when I'm with my friend, the throat surgeon, Ramon, a world-renowned throat surgeon, I think of what he did to get there. The years of medical school and these many surgeries and flying around the world and giving lectures. And I say, that guy is something special. I could never do that. I could never do that. I think I could do it. I think Cullinane could do what Dr. Jill did. Go to the University of Delaware and get a PhD in education. Her dissertation was about the value of a community college education. I'm sorry. I think you could do it.
I don't think you could write that, Jerry. I don't think you could write that.
I could absolutely. And by the way,
your fingers wouldn't work when you tried to write about the value of a community college education.
It sounds like a joke that you get a PhD and they call you a doctor for that. I'm sorry. When I'm around doctors like Ben Carson or Rand Paul, people that have done eye surgery, I'm in awe. At least part of me is in awe because I know I could never do that. I could never get through medical school. I couldn't do a surgery on a toe, let alone a brain or an eye. These are special people. And without them, we'd all be screwed. Where would we be without PhDs in education?
You've worked for these types though, Jerry, right? Like that. I'm the assistant executive producer to the assistant associate senior manager of, and they put all of that on their business card, and then they hand you the thing like.
Right. We know.
Right.
That's why the cost of education, college education, is so high, because every one of these schools are larded up with assistant, deputy, vice chairman of diversity, completely worthless people with worthless jobs. Right. And many of them get online and they get a PhD from the University of Phoenix, and then they want you to call them doctor. And again, it reminds me of that dink Colonel Vindman in the hearing, when Colonel Vindman was addressed as whatever, Mr. And he said, sir, that is Colonel to you. I worked hard for that title. It's like, oh, shut up. They didn't mean any disrespect, you insecure little brat.
This is why I got to give it to the Brits. I think the Brits have it over us. One thing that we should do in this country is, and they do it in Kentucky, but we should do it nationwide. The knighting thing that the Brits do. So some guy's an actor, say Anthony Hopkins, for example, and the Queen, who nobody takes seriously anymore, and she doesn't have any authority or whatever. She says, I'm knighting you. And forevermore, people take seriously calling him Sir Anthony Hopkins, even though it means nothing.
Why do they do it in Kentucky?
They do the Colonel thing, like Colonel Sanders. It's only Colonel Sanders because the governor of Kentucky made him a colonel.
I should correct it. She doesn't have a PhD. She is an EDD, an education. I mean, and you know what? If this were Melania, who, by the way, speaks whatever it is, 5-6 languages, and is spectacular looking, especially compared to most first ladies, never appeared on a magazine cover, never got credit for anything, which is fine. You're supposed to be, not in the forefront. You're not supposed to be out front, unlike, Hillary Clinton or Michelle Obama. Melania just was comfortable with that, kind of like Laura Bush, comfortable being, in the background. Jill Biden is never going to be comfortable with that. She thinks she's a star. She's going to insist on being called doctor, and everyone in the mainstream media is going to play along. And there's going to be magazine covers, and they're going to talk about how brilliant she is and how important she is and how she's crafting legislation in the background. She is going to be obnoxious. Just you be ready for it. Be ready for it.
Is it possible she's crazy like a fox, Jerry? What she realizes, in order to take attention off of her husband, she can do stuff like this, and people like you will just rant on that, because otherwise you're ripping him, and she doesn't want. I'm trying to figure out a way to defend any of this. I don't know.
Yeah, you're the one defending changing the nicknames of the. You're bowing to the mob. That's, of course. You're sitting in your cellar doing my podcast.
It's owning it, Jerry. Like, you got fine. We'll change it because we're gonna come up with something better, something cool. How hard is it in Atlanta with their history and everything that's gone on in that city to come up with a cool nickname that actually ties into the city? Unlike Brave, how hard is this?
It's not hard. It just disappoints your die-hard fans, and they know it, and they do it anyway because they're so afraid of the mob. And in a way, if you're Daniel Snyder and FedEx says you're pulling out, and I don't know what they were paying, like, $100 million for the naming rights. If they're pulling out, you have no choice. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to stand up to the woke mob these days, which is why, I did this yesterday. I gave the Wall Street Journal credit because when their guy Joseph Epstein wrote the column about Jill Biden, perfectly appropriate. It was, controversial. It was something got people talking. And that's what columns used to do. Now columns generally, if you read the New York Times, Washington Post, the columns are there to satisfy the mob, to keep the wolves from the door, and that's why no one even reads most newspapers. But in this case, everybody read it. It upset some people. It made some people chuckle. He kind of mocked the notion of a EDD in education being called doctor, and he called her kiddo. And what was the result? Northwestern, where he lectured, wiped their hands of him and took him off the website. The Biden campaign wanted, and everybody chimed in. Hillary, Michelle Obama, Kamala Harris's husband, they all chimed in with tweets. They wanted not only the Wall Street Journal to take the column off their website, they wanted an apology. That's what they're used to. I mean, these are the leaders of the woke mob, and they're used to just destroying people who don't get in line. And they said, we'll pressure the Wall Street Journal, and you watch. We'll get our apology. We'll get a retraction. They'll denounce this Joseph Epstein guy and say he'll never write for us again. That's what, I mean, the New York Times fired the editor responsible for allowing Tom Cotton to write an editorial, write a column. Anyway, so the Wall Street Journal, to their everlasting credit, said, go screw. This was a perfectly appropriate column. We are not getting rid of him. We're not apologizing. And that surprised me, and it certainly made me happy. I was glad to see somebody standing up to these loathsome people. But speaking of loathsome people, I want to get to the we should mention the vaccine rollout and our and how it's going to work in various states. We saw New York. We'll get to that, and the latest lockdown news in the big cities, in New York, in Boston. It just gets worse every day. These people are just the worst. We're getting to see the true colors of our mayors, our governors, and they're just the worst people. But we'll give you the latest on that. It's not good. It's not good. But first, I want to tell you about Shea Concrete and tell you what Shea Concrete can do for you, BB. Can do for anybody. Shea Concrete, they're the best at this. They can build you a building, your own precast building. And on to the lockdowns here. First, let's quickly do the vaccine. I mean, we're all happy about the vaccine. It's a wonderful thing. Donald Trump forever will be known as the guy who drove the scientific community to develop a vaccine faster than anybody thought he could, we could, they could, anybody could. And it really disappoints all the talking heads on MSNBC, CNN. They wanted lots more misery, and now we're going to have a vaccine. And thank you to Donald J. Trump. And the good thing about it is he doesn't really want any credit. He doesn't really demand any credit for it.
Just like Dr. Jill, like you knew up front because of that. Trump, do you remember? I know you do, but do you remember when those UCLA basketball players got arrested in China? It was the first week of his presidency, and Trump goes to
one of the Ball brothers, Lamello, Jamello.
Yeah. So Trump goes and makes some sort of deal, and he gets them out. And the guys have a press conference, and they say, "Thanks to UCLA, thanks to China, we appreciate it." But they glaringly omit the one guy that does it. So what does Trump do? He goes to Twitter and says, "They couldn't even thank me. I should have left him there." That's how you knew who Trump was and how it was going to be for 4 years, because you either tell me I'm awesome when something goes good, or else I'm going to rip everything. That's the way it is with the vaccine now. Like, you better tell Trump he's great with it.
He's being honest, but and I don't care what Trump does. I don't care you could never tell me.
Well, why is Bill Barr leaving with 3 weeks to go? What is that all
about? Because Trump wants some action, man. He's got a month to go. He wants some
3 weeks, not even
some indictment.
It's like, why? What is that all about?
I tell you, I would be frustrated if I were Trump, knowing that if the world had known the truth about Hunter Biden and the big guy, his father, taking money from the communist Chinese, it might have been different. We might have had a different result. In fact, there's one poll that said it was like 9.4% of voters said they would have voted. Biden voters said they would have voted for Trump or not for Biden if they'd known the truth about the Biden family. But whatever, we've covered that ground many, many times. Here, it doesn't matter what your mayor, your governor does, what the president does, what any senator. There will never be a worse person in power than Andrew Cuomo. We know he's responsible for the death of tens of thousands of senior citizens. We know he's now credibly accused of sexual harassment. And, obviously the mainstream media is covering for him, which still kind of confuses me. At some point, you have to agree that your guy is a total scumbag. And if you're a mainstream media person, Andrew Cuomo is just a vile human being. You know what he did. He lied about what he did. And then he goes and accepts an Emmy, or he does a book promotion with Billy Joel, or now he's throwing a birthday party for himself, on virtual birthday party, to raise money for his own charity with a bunch of celebrities, knowing that the people in the state, many of them are still grieving the loss of loved ones who were killed by his order to put coronavirus. Anyway, yesterday they give the first vaccine in New York to a frontline nurse, and it was a nice little thing. They had to do a split screen to show the governor's reaction in real time. And I'm going, first of all, what the hell does a governor have to do this? This is a governor who said he didn't want the vaccine because Trump developed it and drove it, and he didn't trust it. And now he's literally insisting you show his reaction to a nurse, nice nurse, seems like a worthy person to get the first dose. And it's a great thing. And all the other nurses and everyone's cheering. But we have to see this total dirtbag reacting in real time.
I think you can swear on your own podcast, Jerry. I like that you've shown the restraint.
Total whatever. What do you want to call him?
You skipped a level in there. You skipped a level in there. He said he wouldn't trust any vaccine that came during the Trump presidency. And now that Biden's won, and now that the vaccine is here, and there's like a quarter of New Yorkers that say they're suspicious of the thing, he holds a presser and says, I don't understand why people are suspicious of this thing. And obviously, we're going to have to get them to get with the program. Right. He was the guy that said, you ought to be suspicious of it. Now he's like, people being suspicious of it. So absurd.
He can do anything. He can do anything. Up is down, black is white, And,
this, Jerry.
And it doesn't matter. If you have a D next to your name, the corrupt media, the mainstream New York Times, Washington Post, NBC, CBS, CNN, they will forgive anything, including killing senior citizens, including sexually harassing the women in your office. He can do anything. And now he's being mentioned as a potential attorney general. And I'm all for that, because I would look forward to some of the senators, the good guys.
There's no way.
It'd be great theater, and plus I would feel.
Well, that's one way, I guess, if Georgia happens.
I'd be glad. I'd be glad for people in New York to get rid of them. That'd be great. But
in the same way that
worst.
In the same way that Joe Biden was a tell with the doctor thing. When a guy gets elected to office, like a governorship in particular, there's an easy tell as to what you've got and how insecure they are and how much credit they're going to want to take for stuff. If within 12 hours of becoming governor, the welcome to whatever state it is signs have been changed to say Governor so-and-so. And I can guarantee you, I haven't done I can guarantee you the second that Cuomo won the election, the orders were given to change the welcome to New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo signs were done within that day, because that's the type of stuff people that get worried about this stuff do. And now you're seeing it where you can't even let somebody get a vaccine without trying to Bigfoot that moment.
And you know what's amazing? And if you haven't, is the sexual harassment accusations by the woman who's now running for Manhattan Borough president, worked in his office for years. She came clean on Twitter, just said, I was sexually harassed. Everybody saw it. Everybody knows it. Here's the real maddening thing is everybody believes it. Everyone knows he's a bully. Everyone knows he thinks he can do whatever he wants, have his way, and no one will call him out. Everyone believes her. We don't always believe all women. That's silly. But we believe some women. And this one, we believe. The people in the media believe it. And they don't care because he's a good Democrat, because, he believes.
I don't get
it. And maybe there'll be more evidence, and maybe it'll be too much for him. And maybe, he'll eventually catch up to him. But so far, He's been exposed in the last 10 months as one of the worst of the worst, just a vile, awful human being and an awful governor. He's destroyed small businesses. He's mishandled the whole pandemic like nobody else. And he rides and he sits there like some kind of conquering hero. And the media says, "Isn't he wonderful? Let's give him another Emmy." It's disgusting. But I'll tell you what is
it's like giving Nero a Grammy. He's fiddling while Rome burns. You go, that guy can play a tune. You know what the thing is, though, Jerry?
What's that?
The fundraiser is the key one to me, because as they're shutting restaurants down and they're closing all over New York, and as de Blasio is saying, we're probably going to have a full-on lockdown within a week or so. As that's happening, he sends out this thing because they so either don't care or they're just tone deaf. Hey, for 10 grand, you can have a virtual session with Ben Stiller. Thanks to me. 10 grand. During you've done he's already said this year, look, taxes are going to have to go up in New York big time next year. And I don't know how we're going to get some of the revenue we need for X, Y, and Z. Meanwhile, I'll need 10 grand so you can go, hi, Ben. Hi, I loved you in Meet the Fockers. Like, that's what's so crazy.
It is disgusting. It's not crazy. It's disgusting. It's nauseating. And yesterday was one of the more nauseating days. Right now, obviously, we've lost, I'm looking at the story here, 44% of small businesses in Massachusetts are gone, shuttered, never to return. The restaurants, I think the number's even higher. We're talking about half the restaurants gone. Governors do not care. We have a terrible governor in Massachusetts, Charlie Baker. He's awful. He'll never be Cuomo, but he give him credit.
Aren't they winning the same award? Aren't Baker and Cuomo getting the
they both got an award from the Kennedy Institute, which, as somebody pointed out, you know what you got to do for that? You got to kill people and get away with it. That's their qualification for that award. So Cuomo earned it. I'm not sure why Charlie Baker was accepting an award from the Kennedy Institute, other than the fact that he's just a tyrant and a liberal bully, which is what he is. And yesterday, and get ready for it, because yesterday in Boston, and I don't own a gym, I don't own a bar, I don't own a restaurant. I wish everybody were as upset as I get when I hear these things, because they're maddening. And the half-wit mayor comes out and says, we're going to lock down again because whatever, there's a spike or a surge. So his order says no more museums, which I'm like, oh, so what? A museum, like, you really think that's a vector of transmission, the museums? No more aquariums. And casually says, we're shutting the gyms. And I'm going to tell you right now, I know gym owners. I go to the gym. My wife works at a gym. These people have worked harder than anyone to abide by the ridiculous rules and regulations. They just came up with a rule last week that you couldn't work out without a mask. I mean, at all. You couldn't get on a cardio machine without a mask. I mean, the rules are ridiculous. I've gone to the gym and I've used a piece of equipment and you can't use that because you didn't sign up for that and we haven't sterilized it yet. And I'm like, oh, it's really difficult. But they did what they were told to do, did what they were ordered to do. It's not enough for the mayor, who I don't know who's telling him what to do, but gyms are not hotspots. Gyms are not where people are getting affected. And yet he closes gyms just cavalierly, puts all the people who own gyms, not all of them, puts many of them out of business, puts them into bankruptcy, and doesn't bat an eye. It is just sickening the way these public servants, Cuomo and Baker and Whitmer and Lamont and Murphy and Marty Walsh in Boston, just casually saying, no more gyms for you. And by the way, you still get to go to Walmart. You still get to go to McDonald's and the Cheesecake Factory and Costco and breathe all over people, but you can't go to the gym. And last I checked, VB, there were a couple of high-risk groups. One, obviously, is older folks, people over 75. The other is obese people, fat people. They die. They die in much greater numbers than people who aren't fat. So here's a way to battle this virus. Let's close the gyms. Let's close the gyms and let's make sure that McDonald's and Burger King stay open. Does that make any sense?
Isn't indoor dining going too in Boston? Which is
indoor dining is still on, but they're making more rules and making it more difficult. Obviously we had a curfew, but they've banned bar seating. So and by the way,
They spend all that money on plexiglass and redoing bar, and now forget it.
Nothing, which does nothing. I got some numbers for you. All right. This is New York, by the way. So we'll do New York first. And I was watching some restaurant owners who are just beside themselves. If you haven't seen it yet, there's a couple of videos of the public health department shutting down a restaurant, fining a restaurant. It's maddening. These people are losing everything, just trying to keep their head above water. And these hacks, these total the public employee hacks, come in there and write up citations for hundreds and thousands of dollars to people who can't afford, are trying to just afford to stay open for another day, and they're getting fined by these hacks. It's sickening. But here are the numbers in New York. The percentage of transmission in restaurants is 1.4%, the best they could tell. The percentage of people who are infected at home, 76%. So here's an idea. Shut down the restaurants and send everyone home, where most of the infections occur, at home. We want you at home. Shut the door, stay inside, get infected. Going to restaurants is not where people are getting infected, but these people do not care. Cuomo doesn't care. God knows de Blasio doesn't care. He hates, private enterprise. He hates the free market. And in Boston, I got this from someone in the gym business. This is true. They shut down the gyms because Marty Walsh I don't know he's advising him, but they're fools. They're idiots. They don't know what they're doing. The government is ruining lives based on bad information. I'm not even going to say data. I don't think they have any data. I do. In Boston, from July to in Massachusetts, I'm sorry, from July to November, there were 1.3 million check-ins at gyms where they take your temperature. Do you know how many positive tests they had from gym goers, from gym users? 45. You know what that is? 0.0000325. 0.0000325%. That's how many positive tests they had in gyms. They are not a vector. They are not a problem. And yet the government says, we're going to close you down because we want to show whoever, the Boston Globe, we want to show the folks at Harvard that we mean business. So if you want to go to Walmart or McDonald's, knock yourself out, but you can't go to the gym. It is insane. It is wrong. It is immoral. And not enough people are pissed about it. In fact, like I said, Bill Gates, he wants to close down all restaurants for 6 months. Bill Gates, worth $118 billion. He has a 66,000 square foot home with servants and maids and slaves all over the place. He says, you know what? We're going to have to close restaurants and small businesses for 6 more months. You know what? Screw you, Bill Gates. Go screw you. Who cares what you think? You're not a doctor. You're not a government. You're just a billionaire, a smarmy, elitist billionaire, and you don't care about people who trying to make a real living, trying to work for a living. You don't care. And then the Boston Globe comes out and says, you know what? It's a good idea to shut restaurants down. That's a good idea. These are people who've never worked a day in their lives, who don't know what it means to not get a paycheck, to actually go up and work your ass off for a living. They don't care. It is just so maddening, so frustrating. I know I've done this before. I know I'll do it again, but I wish everyone was as pissed off as I am. I really do.
Well, it's so arbitrary, Jerry. That's the thing, right?
That's the word. You're right.
And the way that they've lectured us on why they've done it in the past, they then don't follow through when they do it again. I interviewed Rand Paul once about a case. The case was in Massachusetts, where the state from a family. Long story, whatever. But I asked Rand Paul about it. He said, "Look, I don't know the ins and outs of the case, but I can tell you this: the bar should be very high before a government ever gets involved in something like this." So the reason why I point that out is I think the bar should be pretty high when the government gets to tell a business, nope, you can't make a living. You can't do what it is you're doing. What you don't hear from Marty Walsh, what you don't hear from Bill de Blasio, what you don't hear from Andrew Cuomo, when they make these arbitrary decisions, is they don't tell you why. Because you just said it, Jerry. Because you can't say, hey, restaurants, here's why. Here's where we know X, Y, and Z happened as a result of Jerry being on the treadmill. We can't have that anymore. It's literally killing people. If they had that data, they would give it to you because follow the science. But the numbers aren't there as far as anybody can tell. And so arbitrarily, they just ignore the set of the science. And in Boston's case, they set up this like step 1, step 2, step 3, but then within each step, there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, up step. And that was all arbitrary. And yet, because Marty Walsh is obsessed with, I'm going to be much more serious and much more of a leader than Charlie Baker, so I'm always going to do it a little more draconian than Charlie. Charlie moves us back to step 1 of phase 3. So what does Marty say? Nope. I got to go to step 3 of phase 2.
And they're gonna, and that's coming. The next day or two, Baker's going to shut everything down. Here's the bottom line.
But it's not science related. None of it.
Of course not. I just gave you the numbers. There's no science. It is. These people are. Here's what people are missing. They're flat out cruel. They are cruel, heartless people who ignored the cries of business owners, of waitresses and bartenders and cooks who have to make a living. It's almost Christmas, and they don't give a damn about these people. Here's the bottom line with someone like Marty Walsh, mayor of Boston. He doesn't even know anyone who works in the private sector. He doesn't even know anyone who started a business. They're an abstract to him. He's a union, guy from way back, a pinky ring union thug. Everyone he knows is in public employee unions or in City Hall. They're all elected officials or they're hacks and bureaucrats. Those people, I'm so tired of hearing from them. Again, I said this yesterday. You should be required, before you start lecturing people, I want to know what you've lost. I want to know what you've sacrificed. No one who lectures you, from Cuomo to Bill Gates to Charlie Baker to Marty Walsh to the Boston Globe, has lost anything. They don't lose a check. They don't lose a payment to their pension, because these hacks all have pensions waiting for them. They don't know what it's like in the real world. They don't know what these restaurant owners that we're seeing destroyed, that we've talked to on this podcast, that I've talked to off the air. These people, they don't know them. They don't feel for them. They don't care about them. So, and it's insane, because when this is all over, they're going to say, hey, we did a good job. We flattened the curve. Marty Walsh, the mayor of Boston, actually said yesterday, and we could play some of it, that we're just going to do this for 3 weeks. He said that out loud. Just do it for 3 weeks. Hey, Marty, we're not fools. We know that's a lie. You've lied to us for 10 months. It was 3 weeks to flatten the curve 10 months ago. No one's buying that bullshit anymore. We know it is a lie. We know you are lying to us. We know you have no science. You have no data. It is completely arbitrary. VB is right. They're trying to show, look at me. I really care. I mean business. I'm taking this seriously. Shut down the gyms. Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Why would you do that? There's no fat people. There's no old people at the gym. There's no one getting sick at the gym. There's no risk here. In fact, just the opposite. He should be telling people, go to the gym, get in shape, lose some weight. We want to see you live here. But he doesn't care. He just wants the appearance. He wants a kiss from the Boston Globe saying, boy, he's serious. He's taking this seriously. He cares about that. These people are vile. These people are sickening. They're disgusting. They're nauseating what they're doing to real people, real working people, real small business. I don't know how this all ends, but I hope there's a real mistrust in our elected officials, because that's what they deserve. They deserve none of the respect.
I think you know how it's going to end. You're going to be driving around. You're going to see a lot of for lease signs everywhere. You
see them already. You see them already.
That's what I was going to say. When does your anger turn to almost giving advice to people to just say, save yourself? In all honesty, like if you're trying to save for your kid's college, close down the restaurant and go do something else. At what point do you get to
said this to somebody the other day, like a young person. I said, you know what you should really try to do? Get a job in the government, whether it's at a public university or city hall or state house or, post office, because they used to say recession proof. When a recession, you'll be okay. They're not going to lay you off. And we talked about this the other day, VB. You know this. They passed a budget where the money went up 5.5% after 10 months of a pandemic, massive unemployment, bankruptcies everywhere. The state is going to spend 5.5% more this year than last year. They are completely immune, to use the term of the day, completely immune to the pain and the sacrifice of people outside the government. So if you kids, if you really want to be all set for life and don't want to work hard and don't want to feel the pinch in times like this, go work for the government.
The book I want to read, because they're going to write millions of books about this period, right? But
Right.
the one that I want to read, and I hope someone's doing it. Otherwise, I'll have to do it, Colin. You love when I write books. It's the dumb decisions that were made during this. For example, I thought one of the dumbest one out of Massachusetts, our entrance was going to be one that they decided to shut down golf courses in the spring. But more importantly, when they finally reopened them barely, one of the things that had to happen is golf courses had to seal the cups because they didn't want somebody reaching in to get their ball, because that was going to be some sort of. It was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard of up until last week, Jerry. Charlie Baker, the governor of Massachusetts, announces, hey, we got to roll back. This is getting crazy and we're thick. And one of the things he announced was, for offices out there, people that have people working in their office, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to roll back the amount of people you can have in the office from 50% to 40%.
Right. Completely made up.
The dumbest thing I've ever. First of all, what office has 50% right now? Number one. Number two, who's doing the math on, okay, Sarah in the back, you're going to have to leave to get us to 40%. 40%.
It's just complete. And
how is that going to change anything?
And if you were to ask, and you can't and you won't, if you say, why are you doing that? They don't know. It's just made up.
It is.
People, A, they're not smart people. B, they're not honest. They're not smart. They're not honest. The more you see them, the more you realize they're just making it up as they go along. And it's all about perception and image and look at me. I'm a leader. It's like when they come out during a storm with their windbreakers. They look at me. I'm taking this seriously.
Yes,
that's the image they want to project. And if you come out like Governor DeSantis in Florida, a great governor, if you come out and say, screw that, we're not shutting down anything. We're not shutting down schools, God knows, and we're not ruining small business. You'll get criticized by the local newspaper, which are all run by friggin' radicals, and you'll get there'll be this perception that you don't take the virus seriously. You don't care about people. So if you want to look like you care about people, here's an idea: destroy small business, put people out of work. That's how you project this image that you really care and you're taking the virus seriously. It's madness. It's upside down world, which is what we've been living in for 10 months. But it's a good point. We'll make that list of absolute insanity. First of all, nothing's more insane than forcing 2-year-olds to wear masks.
Kicking them off planes.
Kicking them off planes if they don't wear masks. Dave doesn't believe that's legit. He thinks the mother's just looking for pub because she's so hot.
I mean, it's legit.
Isn't she on a no-fly list now, though, I think, from that airline, too?
Yeah. What was it, Delta? She can't fly Delta? That's crazy.
You had to be a gay flight attendant to kick her off, because no heterosexual male would say get off to that woman. She's like some fitness model or something. Anyway, her kid didn't want to wear the mask, so they kicked them off the plane. 2-year-old. Everybody knows.
It's not easy. I have a 3-year-old. We had to go somewhere yesterday. It's not easy keeping the thing on the kid.
There's no reason for your kid to wear. There's no reason. It's just image and perception. It's just insane. 6 months.
By the way, well, how about this, Jerry? Let's bring it all full circle. So in Ohio, there's a curfew. It starts at 10 p.m. and nobody can go anywhere and nobody can do anything except, oh my God, the Browns are good.
Right.
What percentage did they have in that stadium? Every time they showed the crowd, it looked like it was 3/4 full. People were up on each other.
No, they were.
And they extended it specifically so you can get home when you get home and it's good and enjoy the game. We're also going to do it for Ohio State because we keep changing the rules for Ohio State.
Well, in Massachusetts, VB, gyms are closed. I mean, you can't go to the gym.
They are in Ohio.
The Celtics are practicing right there. You can look at you drive down the master. You can look in at the gym and see them practicing. I love that. So you if you're a middle-aged guy trying to stay in shape, trying not to get fat, and you want to play pickup basketball, whatever at the Y, oh no, that's too dangerous. But the Celtics can practice all day, every day. That's the other thing that we're seeing is it is all about power. The elite rules for you, but not for the elite among us. They get to do what they want. God knows we've listed the examples of hypocrisy many, many times of all the hypocrites like, Gavin Newsom and Gretchen Whitmer. We've listed all the things they've done. I mean, hell, Andrew Cuomo's been caught without a mask like a dozen times. He doesn't think that you have to wear a mask. He just wants the control and the power. But anyway, we've done that enough. We've done that enough, at least for today. We'll do it again tomorrow because they're going to keep shutting down. They don't care if it destroys lives, ruins businesses.
Cullinan, we got to get Sarah Fuller to run for office, because if she ever won, I think, Jerry, that might be the end of you. I don't think your system could take her being like
no problem with Sarah Fuller. I have no problem with Sarah Fuller. Sarah Fuller seems like a nice person, a good soccer player. She seems like a good kid. The idea, the problem I have is the people in the media who were playing along with the stunt, including the Boston
Globe. You're getting a 35-game jersey from Vandy for Christmas.
It's 32.
32, whatever 32. It is. It's on the NRA sent Nerf guns to that 4-year-old. Vanderbilt better be sending you a Sarah Fuller game jersey. Maybe sign.
It's people like the Boston Globe saying what she did was really hard. Really hard. Why don't they just have
I kicked field goals for fun last year. It took a little bit of muscle to get one 25 yards, to be honest with you.
An extra point took muscle? I don't know. Maybe for you. But
had to put a lot of
I don't know. We're done with Sarah Fuller. She had a great career. She broke all the barriers, and now all little girls everywhere think they can play in the SEC. And
if Vanderbilt had one more game, I think she might have played like receiver.
No,
they're just doing anything they can to use her to get people to pay attention.
They didn't want her on the field for a live kickoff return because they knew someone would have to block her and just destroy her, and they didn't want to risk it. But anyway, we have a frontline medical worker getting the first vaccine in New Hampshire. In Massachusetts, we're still waiting to see whether
Sununu split screen with it.
No, he does not. Only Cuomo makes sure there's a camera on him. There's no Sununu on the big. But in Massachusetts, we're now waiting to see whether it's a murderer, a rapist, a gangbanger, a drug dealer, because Charlie Baker, our moronic governor, said he wants to start in the prisons. He wants to start with prisoners. There are like 75-year-old ladies who haven't seen their grandkids in 10 months. They can wait because, Charles Janes or Zarniev, I know he's not in Massachusetts. Want to make sure Zarniev gets the vaccine before we take care of the old ladies in the nursing homes who haven't left their rooms in 10 months. That's how messed up in the head these governors and mayors are. They want to take care of prisoners first. All right, enough. VB. Mr. Santa Falcon over here with his Falcon Santa hat. God, where do you buy one of those?
If ever a team represented Santa, Atlanta gifts stuff to teams. They did it this week to San Diego. Here you go. Merry Christmas. So
they sure
this is what Christmas is all about. It's about giving.
Santa Ryan there, Matty threw that game away. I laughed out loud and I thought of you, VB. I think of you every time I watched the Falcons.
Here's what happens, Jerry, when that happens.
Another game.
My 6-year-old's addicted to football and the red zone. So we're watching it. At the halftime when San Diego messed up LA, I'm like, oh man, maybe Atlanta will actually win it. So we watch that happen, and my son does this. He kind of smirks. Then he turns to me and goes, yeesh, huh? And I'm like, yeah, yeesh, huh? And that's it. We don't say anything else after that because we're getting numb to it at this point.
Yeah, well, you know what? Switch teams. You should become a Browns fan. They look like they're going to be fun. Become a Browns fan or become...
As long as OBJ stays off the field. That's why you like that team, because OBJ's on injured reserve.
That's true. That's a good point. No OBJ. But anyway, Baker Mayfield was a lot of fun to watch last night. So was Superman LeBron Jackson. I felt bad for Trace McSorley. I thought he was going to bring him back. But anyway, that was a great Monday night game. Unfortunately, we got no Tuesday night football this week. I was getting used to that too. I want more nights of these weird nights of football. But all right, BB, thanks, man. We will talk.
Hockey's coming in.
I know that's what is it? Mid-January start for hockey. So
don't be so sure.
He loves hockey talk.
So we'll Baker and Cuomo, they're going to shut it down. It's dangerous. Hockey could be. You know what? Can't take any chances. But anyway, thanks to BB and thanks to Shea Concrete and Allied Paving and DCU, and thanks to everybody for tuning in, for listening, subscribing, rating, reviewing, and all that. We really appreciate it. Anything else, Cullinan?
Well, you mentioned the Cuomo party with Ben Stiller. Did you see that? We didn't even talk about it before the show. Did you see Ben Stiller chirp back at Janice Dean and then have to apologize for it? Did you see that?
Yes, I did. Oh, by the way, I'm going to tell my Ben Stiller story one of these days. One of the biggest a-holes in Hollywood, one of the biggest. And I got a Ben Stiller story that I guarantee you is 100% true. How's that for a tease? Maybe I'll tell my Ben Stiller story tomorrow.
Is there anything worse than like that chirping when you chirp at somebody and they have like a really good comeback? Well, just a literal, like if you're like, Dave, why are you wheezing? And I'm like, well, I have asthma, idiot. You know, and Janice Dean just fired right back at him and forced to apologize. It was a good,
which is perfect, because the problem is with all these celebrities, Robert De Niro's and Billy Joel's, is they don't pay attention. They don't know what Cuomo has done. They don't know the kind of carnage he has wreaked on that city and that state. They just ignore it and say, oh yeah, he's a good Democrat. He was married to a Kennedy. Isn't he one? And his brother's on CNN. They don't know the story. And if she can do anything here, it's like to tell people what a monster he is. And God bless her, she's doing it every damn day. She's doing her best. Hopefully eventually she reaches everybody and they all realize what a monster he is, and they change their opinion and they vote his ass out of office and kick him out of polite society. I mean, it probably won't happen, but I can dream. All right, that's it. I'm Jerry Callahan. This is the Callahan Podcast, and we'll do it again tomorrow.
And